Recently, a penthouse in a DLF project in Gurgaon was sold for 271 crore rupees. It is reportedly one of the most expensive residential real estate transactions we have seen in India so far. At that price, the per square foot valuation of some Indian properties is beginning to enter the same range as premium apartments in Manhattan. Now, on the face of it, this may look like a sign that India is growing. Look, our real estate prices are reaching Manhattan levels. But I think it is actually an indicator of a much bigger problem. Because while some pockets of Indian real estate may be reaching Manhattan level prices, our average wages are nowhere close to that level. An average person in Gurgaon does not make anything close to what an average person in Manhattan makes. And this points towards the enormous inequality that India is seeing. In fact, look at what has happened to wealth concentration over the last few years. In 2014, India's richest 0.1% owned around 18% of the country's wealth. By 2022, their share had risen to almost 30%. Think about that for a second. We are talking here about the richest 0.1% controlling almost one-third of the country's wealth. In 8 years, wealth became dramatically more concentrated at the very top. Research on Indian equality suggests that the top-end concentration has now reached historically extraordinary levels. There is a small group of people with enormous amounts of wealth who can afford to bid for these properties. At the same time, ordinary people are increasingly struggling to buy any decent piece of property in Gurgaon. Residential property prices in Gurgaon have reportedly risen by around 117% between 2019 and 26. So in about 7 years, they've more than doubled. But salaries and particularly real wages have certainly not doubled at anywhere near that rate. And I think this transaction points to another problem. Gurgaon's air quality and public infrastructure are nowhere near Manhattan levels. Research on housing markets show that environmental amenities, green spaces, and better infrastructure can get reflected in property prices. When public infrastructure is inadequate, gated communities can create their own private substitutes, whether that is electricity backup, water, security, landscaping, or other amenities. And this is exactly the kind of contrast that you see in Gurgaon. The Dahlias is located in one of Gurgaon's most exclusive residential pockets. When you enter some of these DLF golf course developments, you can almost feel that you've entered a foreign land within India. You have the golf course, landscaped green areas, clean roads inside, security, power backup, and spaces where you can actually go out for a morning walk. Outside, however, you're still living in Gurgaon. You're still dealing with the pollution, traffic, power problems, and other infrastructural weaknesses of the city. The NCR continues to record extremely high levels of particulate pollution. So what high inequality can create is a market not necessarily for improving the entire city, but for escaping from the problems of the city. If you're rich enough, you do not have to wait for everyone to get reliable electricity, cleaner streets, green spaces, or better public infrastructure. You can simply buy access to a small pocket where many of these things are privately provided. So poor public infrastructure does not necessarily prevent ultra-luxury real estate from becoming more expensive. In a highly unequal society, it can actually make these protected properties even more desirable. And to me, this reflects a larger hypocrisy of the Indian elite. Instead of demanding that the average Indian or the average Delhiite should have cleaner air, reliable electricity, green public spaces, good roads, We seem increasingly comfortable creating small islands where those who can afford it can simply escape these problems. We are creating Manhattan priced islands without creating Manhattan quality cities around them. Thank you so much for your attention. I'll see you with another important question at Devil Wears Data.